What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Graphic Design Cast. We
I
are
think
your
you got
regular
that wrong.
hosts. Oh wait, no, yeah,
You
wait,
got
count me back, run it back,
you got that so wrong.
run it back. Nick, cut this out. I'm sorry.
Deeply graphic design cast. Tune in, hold tight, make it last. Bold ideas, endless thoughts. Graphic minds connect the dots.
I feel recording is higher, getting elevated like a lighter. I'm burning so bright you don't know my light. I'm going crazy like a fire.
Oh man.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Deeply Graphic Design Cast. I'm your host, Nick Longo. Just kidding. We switch it up today. We're switching it up big time. So my name is Finn Evans. I'm a graphic designer and illustrator based out of New York City. And this is Matt. Matt, tell us about yourself.
Hi everybody, my name is Matthew, or otherwise known as Matt. I do a lot of fun stuff. I'm primarily a graphic designer and an illustrator. Been doing this roughly now since junior year of high school, and have been in love with it ever since.
Exactly. So today we're on the Deeply Graphic Design Cast to talk about our journeys from doing design as a passion to going to art school and moving that into a career. And we kind of are still in this process, but we have a lot of insight that we'd like to give to everyone, but especially people our age. We have some takeaways for you guys today, talking about professionalism, how to kind of put on that design personality to put you in a place of luck that creates opportunities, and how to kind of seize the moment when it comes to talking to people and networking. Matt and I have known each other for less than a year, but in many ways...
Less than a year, dude. I mean, we should put a label on it. We met each other in July, August. It is October.
Yeah,
we have not
perfect.
known each other that long.
We have not known each other that long, but we connect on so many levels because we have kind of this similar foundation that we wanted to share with you all today.
100%. Yes.
Yes. So let's get right into it. Let's start with this. So our backgrounds, we based each other off of like graphic design and illustration. How did you kind of get into that?
So I got into it roughly around the time of high school. I really wanted to be an actor, but that wasn't necessarily something that was in the cards for me. I kind of fell out of love with it. My dad, who is a designer, was like, hey, you should pick up Illustrator. I think you'd really like it. So I pick it up. I make my first travel poster of Yosemite National Park in California, and kind of fell in love with the art of poster making kind of in my junior year of high school. That kind of like compounded into like a lot of things, and my dad introduced me to Benny Gold, fell in love with his style, more importantly, fell in love with his message, and thought to myself, hey, graphic design is a way that I can use it for storytelling. And whereas I might not be an actor anymore, I could be an artist, I can be a designer. And those are the stories that I want to tell. So I picked it up going into college, kind of pursue that outside of college, and thought, oh, what stories can I tell? What worlds can I build? And that kind of ended up with me kind of maybe like falling out of love with that for a little bit because it was so hard for me to actually get into professionally, but realizing that even after I was able to reach what I wanted to, it's still important to tell my own stories. So that's kind of where I am right now in design, using it just as a venue to storytell. What about you, Finn? How'd you get started?
So cool, man. You're always such a story-focused designer, and I think that's really cool. I kind of had like a bit of a wandering path in the design world because I actually started in a different field completely. I never thought that I would go into graphic design. I wanted to be a professional parkour athlete. That was my main plan A. But that kind of all changed when I broke both my ankles at 16 in high school, and kind of had to shift my practice and my course because trying to be a professional athlete while recovering from such intense injuries is a really hard thing to do. You have to play catch up. And eventually I did kind of catch up to where I want to be, but that was after I really fell in love with design and illustration. And so that kind of took the back seat for me while I started to focus and develop those skills more. And I kind of started out in the art world, obviously drawing since I was a little kid, but I actually started making films ever since I was like 10 years old. So me and my brother would make these like fan films that we upload to YouTube. And I just never stopped doing that. And so I kind of have like this sense of filmmaking, cutting and editing, combined with like this understanding of motion and movement from parkour, and now this new passion for kind of bringing ideas to life simplistically. So for me, it was kind of only natural to go towards the route of like bringing things to life in kind of like an illustrated and kind of profound or beautiful way.
Dude, I just gotta say, I did not know that you made YouTube videos. It makes so much sense because you're so into parkour, and we shared love for superheroes.
Yeah.
I I got my start, I'd say, like making in YouTube videos too, because we grew up in such a time where that was such a magical thing. Now
Right.
it's not as much so, but no, I grew up making Beyblade videos. Those were my favorite things to make when I was a
Dude.
kid. So I kept doing
Yes.
that even after I fell in love with Beyblade because was still in love with just actually making things. And
Yeah.
obviously that's where we are now, and that's kind of led to how we met. But to that point, we both got involved with Adobe in very different ways. Actually, no, very similar ways to that point. I got involved through the Adobe Creative Retreat, the first one we held, or the team held in LA. That's where I kind of got to meet Andrew Hawkrattle, who got me involved with a lot of Adobe stuff. That's where I first met Nick, who's the reason that we're doing any of this, the reason why we actually met, the reason why we're sitting down chatting with you guys here today.
Definitely.
But yeah,
Shout
do
out
you want
Nick.
shout out Nick? But yeah, in terms of my own experience with the Creative Retreat, it was just an absolute blessing because I felt lost in my career, as I had mentioned earlier, because I wasn't hitting the strides that I wanted to. But I met the right people here that really set me up on a good path to essentially tell the stories that I want to tell or I want to be part of telling. But was your experience roughly the same, Finn, or was it different?
Yeah, kind of different in a similar way, and that doesn't make sense when you say it at first. But what happened was I kind of took this like passion that I had for all this artistic stuff and kind of shifted my eyes onto more of a career. Because as you get older and go through high school, especially in the US and America, that becomes like the main focus of your life. So I graduated high school and I didn't really know what I wanted to do exactly, but I know it was going to be design related. So I took a year off and then I applied and got into art school in New York City, which was like a dream come true for me. I'm still amazed that I even got in because that was just like such a far-fetched dream. And having that passion led me to practice so much, which gave me kind of this doorway into a really solid career. But that doesn't come guaranteed, right? It's all about putting in that work to make sure you hone your skills and to make sure you kind of grow your world. Because as designers, that's one thing that's often not talked about, and it's something that definitely wasn't brought up to me when I started. Was that design is it's three parts. Design is it's a Venn diagram of your technique, how you think, and how you speak, and like what you say, all combined. So when I started going to school, I got a few opportunities, and one of them was this Adobe portfolio review in New York City. Huzzah, right? It was really cool because like Adobe is such a well-known company. We kind of rely on their products as designers. In many ways, it's kind of like an industry standard. So being able to literally get my stuff reviewed by them was kind of monumental. So I go to this portfolio review and kind of, do all the things that this opportunity would have let me do, like show up early, like ask for help, anything like that. What can I do? What can I do? Just try to make sure it runs smoothly and kind of help out in any way. And here we are today. That kind of led me to, working more in depth with Adobe and meeting so many people who cross paths in a similar way, so many students, and that's like my entry into this kind of world and how we got here.
Got it. So you didn't go to a creative retreat.
It was, yeah, it was the
Okay.
creative retreat. It's like that's how it was framed. It was like a portfolio review.
Okay, yeah, because
That's
they
all I
have
knew about it.
because Adobe has so many different events from creative cafes, create nows, creative jams, a lot of creating. But creative retreats specifically are geared towards students either freshly graduated or on their way to being graduated.
That's right.
So what Finn kind of touched upon was he had seen this opportunity as a really great opportunity for what it is, and really took that to the next level in networking and getting connected with the team that was out there, including one of our really good friends, Megan Reinhardt. She's fantastic. But
Shout out, Megan. Thank you.
yeah, we kind of connect very similarly in that way where opportunities are very important to us. They don't come easy. they don't necessarily come easy, but what's the word? When they come, you got to grab it, and you really have to focus in on it.
It's
Um,
momentary.
it's
Yeah.
momentary. Thank you for filling that in.
No, 100%. And this is one thing that like I wish I could impart to these younger students coming up now is that nothing is ever handed to you in this life, but especially in this career. And for how big the world is and how expansive design is and is becoming, it's an extremely small group of people. So never discount anybody sitting next to you, and never ever say, okay, I think I'll do this later, or maybe tomorrow. Especially when it comes to networking with people, this is like the biggest thing I've learned. Go out of your way to create those opportunities, because you really can't make opportunities, but you can put yourself in a lucky position, right?
Yes.
So put yourself in a places where opportunities happen.
Yeah, and it was through. Oh, sorry. Do you want
No,
to?
no, no. Go ahead. Go ahead.
But to your point about being in the position to make these things happen, when I wasn't picking up internships, what I had done was I had focused on making my own streetwear brand, my own brand about bears, which I'm starting to continue again. And it was through this work of me wanting to tell stories and not being able to tell that with anyone else, so I decided to take that upon myself to do. Andrew, who's heavily involved with Adobe Live, saw that work and was like, hey, we'd love for you to come on and talk about it. And that was the opportunity that I needed in order to actually feel confident about myself, because I had lost a lot of that through just so many rejections. And I was actually rejected. My biggest rejection was by Universal Studios, funnily enough.
Well, and this
that's
is like looking for a job, right? Like
it's looking for a job, yeah.
Yeah.
And it stoked the fire in me that I need to tell stories again. So just all of this had compounded together, and this was around the time last year, actually, where I started doing more work with Adobe through the Adobe Creative Retreat and being in touch with their team. And it was through that where I got to go to the Adobe Creative Retreat in San Francisco, the second one. And then later, roughly a year later, Finn and I met at the Adobe Next Gen Design Summit.
That's
I
right.
think is the correct name.
Yeah, Adobe puts on all these events for the community, especially recently, and this was like an extended version of those creative retreats. So people who had like these really great portfolios and ideas would get together and get flown out to the Adobe headquarters and kind of get a tour, help with some product stuff, and yeah, generally the kind of like network, meet each other. So because we showed up, we had that mission in mind. Matt was telling those stories. I was trying to do everything to the best of my ability. We were able to kind of work it. It's almost like luck in a way, that we could like do this crazy thing and end up, flying. Like I never thought I would get into art school, and yet here I am, like in San Francisco, with some amazing young minds from all over the world in different schools and in different professions, and it was honestly mind blowing.
Yeah, seconded. I had been to San Francisco before. I'm from the Bay Area, but Finn here had never been to San Francisco prior, and honestly, a lot of the East Coasters hadn't. So, I think for me, even outside of just design, I love history, which is one of the reasons why I like stories so much. So, being able to take a lot of these first-time West Coasters or first-time San Francisco goers around the city was a really fantastic, because you got to see all their reactions to a city that you know and love, that honestly you are kind of well accustomed to seeing the Golden Gate Bridge, or maybe Chinatown in San Francisco.
It's beautiful.
A call out reaction by Finn was we actually visited the exterior of Lucasfilm, and he was like, "That's a Yoda statue. Why do they have a Yoda statue?" And that was really fun. But
Yeah.
Getting to meet all these designers from all across the country and Canada was super cool, and honestly really re-inspiring to me, because I had just started working in corporate, and I was still getting kind of adjusted to telling stories that are kind of are out of my control, in the sense of that I don't own this character. And that was something that I was really looking for again. It was finding ownership in my work and being able to say, hey, I made that and it's mine. Yeah, and we got me and Finn and a few other designers. We were all able to present our work, and I presented one of my projects, and it got really, it got it got a really like nice reaction. It really did. I had a friend record it, and in the playback of it, you can hear people whispering, going, "Oh my God, that's so cute! What?" And it's those people that were in the audience of like four people I think said something along the lines of that in an audience of 30, and I was like, I'm gonna do this again. And it was inspiring to be around people that are so energetic, that are so creative, but also just so inspiring and forthcoming about their own struggles, and it was a lot of fun. What about you,
Yeah.
Finn?
No, yeah, it was great. And being able to be at the Adobe headquarters and see so many different people, all their work, kind of talk to them and hear about like where people our age want to go with design, where the state of our industry is going, and how we can shape it to be better. That stuff was really like the biggest takeaway for me because getting to kind of meet these people was just like insane. Like we had Canadians, we had people from all over the nation, and that was just so cool. Yeah. And then of course, like outside of that, we got to see the city a little bit and do some really amazing stuff. But like the point is that we Matt and I were able to get that experience because we did two things. We did two main things. We put in the work to our craft, so we stay committed, be it from rejection, getting you inspired again to make something, or in my case, trying to take every chance I get to make something good. And we kind of exploded that showcase, right? Like both of us tend to have like these kind of switch it on, switch it off kind of personal skills, and that can take you a long way. Going back to our Venn diagram of like, how you present your work and how you speak.
You're gonna have to draw that Venn diagram just so we
Yeah,
can,
yeah.
as this podcast comes
Oh
out,
my gosh, yeah, you bet.
we can refer back to it and show people. No, you're gonna draw it now.
Always.
but to that point, honestly, I think you really encapsulated it. I find a lot of joy in connecting with people, and that's where it really comes from. And when you meet these people, they will know that you find joy in connecting with them because you start talking about things that aren't career related. You start talking about where they're from, what they do with where they live right now. I'm currently thinking about Ryan Selby because he also lives in New York, and that is something I will never understand because I don't think I'll ever live in New York.
New
But
York's crazy. That's where I'm at right now, by the way.
yeah, New York is where Finn is based, and he is calling right now at 10 p.m. So thank you for coming to my schedule 3 hours later in your day.
Brooklyn. Yeah, no problem. No
But
problem.
yeah, I find so much joy in getting to really know someone, and I think that's where a lot of the opportunities that have come my way have really stemmed from. It's being able to know these people on a deeper level, getting to understand just who they are as people and why they do what they do. Because with our friends at Adobe, they do design, they teach it, they all do it for a reason, and more likely than not, they do it because they love it. Shout out Michael Fugoso. Shout out Kelsey Slay.
Yeah.
Shout out all of them. But
We love
yeah.
our Adobe team, man.
Speaking of, Michael Fugoso and Kelsey, it was through our next gen experience that the community team, specifically Anaheli, thank you.
Thank you,
Um,
Anaheli.
yeah, she brought us out to Adobe Max, and I actually had no idea if I was going to go, but getting that email was really exciting for me. And yeah, Finn, do you want to talk a little bit more about that experience?
100%. Yeah. Adobe Max was insane. They hosted it in Florida this year for those who didn't know. And Adobe Max, if you don't know that name or that convention, is like a yearly release and recap of Adobe and what they plan to do, the new things that are coming out in terms of features, and a marketplace of designers from all over the world. So they get together for like a 3-day conference in a giant center. They have like a marketplace with lectures and tutorials you can go to, and then they also have these giant keynote presentations for everyone in the entire conference where they talk about new releases, new features, and upcoming design stuff. inspiration, all that. So for me, I've never been to anything like that in my whole life. So it's really unique to see all that kind of come together into one giant, massive experience and get to be even a part of that. Like mind blowing, mind blowing.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you
I
think?
so I had been to Max before because it was hosted in LA, which is where I'm based out of. So I had a general grasp on what Max was like, but getting to go there again with my buddy Finn, I was like, oh my gosh, I get to experience it secondhand from someone that's never experienced it before. But what was new for me was that they had actually flown us out a few days prior, so we could go to a creators or our community summit. So we had people from all over the world, from the UK, a friend that I've known for the last year now, who's based in Bali right now, fly out, and we all got together, 150 of us, and it was so amazing, kind of getting to hear about everyone's different creative process and why we're doing what we're doing. And it's really cool to kind of see what it's like for freelancers, what it's like for corporate designers who are also freelancing and doing all this juggling. And we have people that aren't just designers per se, but they do murals, they do custom lettering, and just all this fun and fantastic stuff.
Yeah, it's
And
so
yeah,
cool.
that summit before the conference was really amazing. And it was nice to kind of get a lot of people in the community that have been involved with Adobe over the last maybe few years. It was really inspiring to kind of see what their career aspirations are within the next few years.
Yeah, man, Max is insane. And that summit was really important and impactful too. It also kind of showed me like how much the focus of social media is in the design world right now, and how to kind of leverage that and what it means to be like an influencer and somebody who makes content versus just a designer. A lot of the people in the design world will probably relate to doing freelance in some way, and in my like limited design world experience, that's honestly like such a big part of doing graphic design. Like that's the whole practice for me, is being able to sit down with somebody, assess their idea, and kind of determine what you need to do to build on it and essentially like solve a problem.
Yeah.
So being able to get so many people in the same room who understand that verbiage and that way of doing things was really cool.
Yeah.
And
So touching back on the rest of Max, I unfortunately did not have any time to attend any more workshops. But Finn, on the topic mentioned prior of just jumping on those opportunities, Finn was at every workshop.
Yeah, every
Truthfully,
minute.
at the conference, we spent like zero time together, which was the funny part, because anytime I'd run into Finn, something was happening. Like
I
the
was like,
only
"I'm sorry,
time I ran
I
into
gotta
Finn,
go."
yeah, right. The only time I ran into Finn, the only time was when he was getting interviewed by Torin, from the Adobe Live team, and I was just like, of course, the only time I run into him, he's getting interviewed. This is so funny. But no, yeah, dude, if you could talk more about your experience just going to the workshops and maybe what your takeaways were or what you've learned.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was so cool that this conference wasn't just like a show up and hear the information. Like you actually got to go and dive deeper into things. Max gives you this cool app. You can sign up for like all these talks and lectures and workshops. So I signed up for a bunch of different things. I signed up for like Adobe certifications. I signed up for lectures about like branding, lectures about stuff I didn't know that much about, like video editing at like professional levels, and a bunch of other like social media stuff. So I went through like all these really cool conferences, and in the social media thing, I learned a lot about like what kind of content is doing well right now, like medium format video, 45 to like 1 minute 30-second videos, 90 seconds, and then I also kind of learned about like this strategy behind building effective brands. Like there was a ton of different brand designers that gave lectures, and like a lot of the takeaway was to think bold and think different. And it's so cool that was like the main focus in that takeaway, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously it was like bustling and hectic, and
Oh
I
my
was
gosh.
hungry and
It's a
tired
mini
and
it's a
just-
mini city. It's a mini city.
It's crazy how they set that up and organized it. All the people there were super friendly too. We had this one
Yes.
guy who like greeted us every day. It dapped me up, and you know he was
He
real
had so much
energetic.
energy. I know
Real
exactly what you're
energetic.
talking about.
You know, kind of
Yeah.
radiate when people are into it. So
Yeah.
I like him too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in terms of the workshops, I think what's really cool about Adobe Max is that most people that are leading the workshops, you will see them walking the floor. You will see people that
Oh
are
yeah,
keynote speakers
so
walking the
cool.
floor, just hanging out, just being part of the community. So if you're
Mm.
not even in these workshops, I find myself learning so much from the professionals that are on the floor that you can just talk to. Maybe it's someone you saw making content online, or maybe it's someone that's working at a different company that you're very curious about. Everyone's from a different like aspect of design, so coming together kind of at this hub for like just a few days is really cool to kind of see where others are in their creative journey. Even people at the summit, a lot of them had just picked up Illustrator or Photoshop in the last few years, but here they are making content at maybe like 50K or 100K followers, and really thinking about, hey, I wasn't in design before, but now that I am, what can I do with it? And getting to cross-reference that with people that can show you what's possible is so important for me. And getting to see that on that Max floor is super inspiring, and that's kind of where I drive a lot of my inspiration from when
Yeah,
I'm there.
that's awesome. I remember you two were just like hanging out at the community booth.
Yeah.
Adobe, has like a little corner for the community crew, and Matt was always there chatting to somebody, and I thought that was really sick. So, yeah, man, what'd you think of that sneak stuff though? That was crazy.
Oh yeah,
The
Sneaks
sneak
was
peek of the new
crazy.
features.
Yeah, man, I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes like the first time I'm hit with a sneak, sometimes I'm a little scared. But
Yeah.
after it all set in, it's pretty exciting because sometimes industry shakeup is, I think, what we need, especially in terms of when we think about like workflow and how things are happening. I think it's very natural for people our age to be scared about all these new tools that are coming out
People in
because
general, yeah.
people in general. And I think something that I always like echoing to students is that we kind of have to stay at the top of it so that we can teach people that have been in the career or been
Yeah.
in their design careers a lot longer, kind of what we've learned and how we're dealing with all these different changes and how we can actually incorporate all these new updates that are rolling out because there's a lot.
Yes. Everybody listen up right here, right now, especially all my fine artists out there, and not the good-looking kind. AI is not going anywhere, unfortunately. Like, if you think our jobs as creative people are at risk, they are at risk. But if you can try to change your state of mind to think about how this can be used more as a tool and less as like a replacement, I think that can really benefit everybody. And that's one thing that I think as designers it's crucial to hold on to is that this accelerates our process, but nothing will replace how we think about things.
Yeah,
So it was really
100,000%.
it
Yeah,
it was really cool to see all these features coming out. And yes, like at first, some of them, especially the like quick design feature for those who followed it, the sketch to full design, that made my heart drop quickly. But at the end of the day, even if that is released and becomes an industry standard, like that's just something we're gonna have to learn. So the more we try to push against it, I think the more it will come back in our face. So the best thing we can do is try to rally for positive um, critique or positive like constraints on these rules and really advocate for using it mentally well, right? Like, what I'm
yeah.
trying to say.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And even to that point, having now been in creative entertainment space for roughly around the last 10 months, I've noticed that AI is not replacing any of these artists. It definitely is streamlining their workflows, and I've witnessed a lot of artists seeing, at least from like the broad terms of just entertainment industry as a whole, wanting to incorporate it and seeing how they can incorporate it in like their early stages of their process. But that does not take away the artistry of what they're doing, because at the end of the day, like they want to be the ones making those smaller models. They want to be the ones making the concept art. That is what they want to do. That's why they're here in the first place.
Yeah.
And
And
what I've noticed in some aspects is that some creative leaders really, 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 really emphasize your creative ingenuity, and that hopefully is not going away. At least in my experience, I don't think it's going anywhere.
yeah, you also do a ton of work. Well, you work for Disney in the like theme parks area, right? And so you also will work with sign painters. For those who don't know, sign painter is kind of like it's like Latin. Like it's not necessarily dead, but it's kind of a craft that's not really valued the same or looked at the same anymore. I have a sign painter down the street, Van Z Sign Company, and I got to tour his place one day and see like all his stuff and his
That's
work.
so cool.
Really amazing stuff that he just uses like these oiled up slick brushes and does like a lot of gold leafing and these long expansive projects. And that like he was telling me like this is a hard thing to get into. The people who do it are kind of old heads who are pretty grouchy about their craft, and it's a lot of people who are aggravated by like these technological advancements. So honestly, learning to get in front of them, like you said, will help you in the long run.
Yeah, we learn from the people that are both before us and the people that are coming after us. Definitely keep note
Right.
of the people coming after us because, oh my gosh, people in our generation and the people below our generation have grown up with the Adobe suite, essentially. I grew up on Photoshop making those Beyblade videos. I needed a YouTube channel background. I was Photoshopping it really poorly, but I was still doing it. And
No,
the fact
we all
that
did, man. That was
right? The fact
me
that
back.
all these kids now have access to essentially generative AI, they're coming hard with new artwork. So be prepared for that. But be open to it, be accepting of it, and see honestly like kind of what the future holds. That's what I have to say about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, even to that topic of sneaks and how we're going to incorporate AI in the future of essentially the creative industry. What I found a lot of comfort in was talking to the rest of the community, even at Max, about kind of what this means for the future and how we're going to incorporate this into it, into our foreseeable future. But again, it's being surrounded by people in which you learn, whether or not you're back in school, whether or not you're out, find that community, get involved, and see what you can learn from anybody.
Definitely. To any design students coming up or people who don't necessarily have a community around them, maybe you're not as like well versed in that world of talking to people, practice it in small ways. And it doesn't have to be necessarily talking to people about graphic design. It can be like asking your barista, oh, actually, like I don't want the caramel, I want the hazelnut flavor. Like, speaking up about that stuff, I even struggle with that to this day. But I think like I started asking people random questions on the subway a while back, because that's a big thing you can do in New York is just talk to anybody. And I would also say things randomly like, oh man, like love your shoes, that's super cool, or like, yo, cool backpack. Most of the time people just look at you and like nod like, yeah, I know. But sometimes they'll be like, oh cool,
New
yeah, thank you.
York.
Spark it up a little bit. And those kind of small like leaps of trying to talk to people will add up over time. And I think that can like help you network. But to that point, like being able to find that community of people who you can talk shop with is super important. So like reach out, and if you don't have anybody in your world you want to share things with, feel free to reach out to Matthew or myself.
Very
We're
true.
always readily available. We talk shop, we discuss, we give you life updates, life advice. We can share cool pictures of cats. Anything you want,
Man.
we're here for y'all.
Yeah, but even to your point, I think when I was really in like a period where I didn't feel like I was growing, I honestly correlate it to not being around the right creative community. I think when I was most depressed, honestly, with my work was when I was alone. But getting to share that with people, getting honest feedback, even brutal sometimes, I had a smile on my face because my work was because someone was reacting to my work, and it was giving me this energy that I had honestly like not really experienced before. So after kind of experiencing that through the first Adobe Creative Retreat, I went back to a lot of Adobe events afterwards because that was an energy that I was looking for.
Right.
And I actually even periodically left school to actually search for bigger communities just of design, of creativity, and why are we doing this? I have very specific reasons in the sense of I want to tell my story, I want to tell stories, period. Because I think that's just part of the it's one of the higher needs of design. I cannot pronounce the word. I am not going to try to on a podcast.
Hierarchical.
Thank you. He said it. He knew exactly what I was saying.
Yeah, man. You're great with the storytelling, and I don't want you to lose your train of thought. But that's
Thank you.
That's like one power that you have, I think. that's one thing you practice a lot probably. Like maybe it comes as like not necessarily talent, but skill you've built up, right?
Yeah. And for
Yeah.
me, community feeds into that story that I wanted to tell about design. Even when I'm like, if it's like a postcard about an event, like I'm gonna make the postcard about the people going to the event because that's what matters to me. It's what conversations are we gonna have? What's going to occur here? No,
Drop
you
my
can take
pen.
notes. You can take notes. Don't
I
worry.
am. I am. I'm taking.
No, you're good, man. But yeah, to that point, I mean, you are part of so many different creative communities. You know people that are doing music, people that are doing parkour, people that are doing
Yeah.
documentaries about parkour. What's that
It's
like? How
crazy.
how are those different creative communities feed into your ultimate output into the world?
This is such a zinger. Good question. So first of all, value of creative communities, especially as a young designer trying to get started, mad important, super important. You're always trying to kind of like climb up and get this job, do a really good job so you can get the next one. But kind of community allows you to not only get those jobs, but kind of reflect on what it is you're doing, maybe why you're doing it, and what you're doing exactly. So like uh, I like to run my mouth a lot, and sometimes that's gotten me like into trouble. But most of the time, it's helped me out. Like I've gotten to work with a bunch
Seconded,
of
correct.
yeah, yeah. Most of the time, that's got me where I want to go through talking to people and basically establishing like, oh, cool, you do this, I do this. Let's work together. How can like I get involved in your world and you get involved in mine? And even that like connection of two places that seem entirely separate, like graphic design and parkour, they combine. And so like I grew up around people a lot older than me who would train parkour, and they'd always be hanging out and doing things and going to events. And so
Hmm.
uh, that kind of like led me to be like, oh, cool. Like I want to be a part of that too. Like I want to be like at the cool kids table. I'm no child. I want to be with them. So like
Okay.
I follow to these events, right? I follow and like go with and like hear all these things and see all these things, and kind of I took that away as a lesson to get involved more, like through avenues you would not expect, and that
Yeah.
always pays off. Like I like to say that in life, inspiration comes from elsewhere. So not necessarily,
100%.
yeah, right. Like most of the time when you do a project that somebody hires you for, it's kind of like cut and dry. You do this, then you do that. But when you do your own work, I find it really valuable to pull from other interests. So in order to have other interests to pull from, you have to be interested in different things. So always
Yeah.
researching.
I
It's a
like to
long-winded way of saying that.
I like to describe Finn artwork this way, at least when it comes to illustration. But nobody I've seen can draw specifically like poses the way I feel like Finn can, particularly because
Thank you.
like he does parkour. We were walking in the hotel we were at in Miami, and I saw Finn kind of walk a little further past me and kind of trail his eyes along certain railings, and like he walked past me, and I go, Finn, did you just map out like a possible parkour route? And then he looks at me and just like nods his head yes. And I find so much inspiration from that because the way that Finn takes in the world is different than the way that I take in the world. And
Right.
even not just to the lens of parkour, but to the lens of maybe like concept artists or video game developers. They take in creativity in so many different ways that I can't do, but I find so much inspiration from it, and appreciation from it. So that when I'm out of that world, or when I become more removed from them, just like in passing or something like that, I think to myself, wow, I want to be dedicated to my craft the way that this person is. Not necessarily because they're like an artist or creative, but because they love doing what they're doing,
Right.
and they're really passionate about it. And I feel like that's super cool. Like I think one of my personal appreciations are writers because um, in a story you need the writer. You need the writer to tell your story. You need the why. You need the definitive why. And I feel like that's what writing can accomplish for us, at least in stories. So super important to me. And my roommate, great friend of mine, he's just a fantastic writer. So I love hearing what he's cooking and hearing what he's up to because it makes me want to tell my stories. And then we can just have this dialogue about what we're doing and what we want to do.
Yeah. Um, that's super cool. So another thing I wanted to kind of say to that point is having a community is important, but also having people you can talk shop with,
Yes.
talk life with is super important. Like one of my best friends, and kind of like my inspirations in
Say
life
his
is
name. Is it Ezra?
Ezra Cumbo, baby.
There you
Ezra
go.
Cumbo. Ezra Cumbo, he's one of the most talented artists that I know, skilled artists that I know as well. And I met him and kind of said like, I like this guy. We need to be friends. Like I need him to push me, and I want to know him because he's cool. And so I kind of just got to know him better and better, and then we kind of became super close. And I started doing a lot more drawing because of him, and
That's
we kind
awesome,
of
man.
push each other. We always try to say, okay, this is good, but this is good, but. So finding people you can
That's
bounce
awesome.
back and forth with is invaluable in life, and I credit a lot of like that skill building that I have with drawing to him pushing me.
Dude, to that point of you seeing his art or meeting him for the first time and saying we need to be friends, when you first started talking to about him more in depth, I was like, I gotta follow this guy. And seeing his artwork is honestly really cool on Instagram because again, I think like at least within the last 10 months of kind of now being involved more in the industry, you meet a lot more like quieter individuals because I think me and
Yeah.
Finn are part of this generation that has grown up with influencers from kind of like the very beginning. So we're very used to seeing like a lot of like content creators or designers or illustrators with a high following. But I've honestly noticed like a lot of like the equally as talented designers, like it's 50-50. Like half of them like talking about it and like having a social media presence, but half of them like being behind their work. And that's really cool. And seeing them have maybe like a few followers, but having like a very specific style that is uniquely them. And that in it of itself is inspiring. In case you can't tell, me and Finn just find inspiration everywhere.
Dude, okay, yes. So Matt has this really amazing quality to kind of always be in a state of wonder. And you asked me this really great question a while ago. You said like, what does your zone look like when you get in the zone and you start creating? Um, and and I was like, oh, like I don't know, white space, emptiness. And you had this really profound kind of great answer. You said you imagine a hike, right?
Yes.
Yeah, like what does it look like though?
Okay, yeah. So I'm just gonna add context to this whole story because I actually think it's hilarious. We're sitting in a Shake Shack.
How
It's
long did the
like
story
we're
start?
delirious. We're so tired, and I'm chatting with some other people down the table. And again, like Finn and I, we talk outside of these events, so we don't necessarily spend too much time always conversing with one another there. But I loop back around, I see Finn, and we just talk. And one of the first things I say is when I see you again is, hey, so like, what does your creative space look like in your head? Like, what does it look like? And then
Mm.
you're like, oh, I gotta think about this, and you just really think, and you say the white room you're describing, but then you fail to mention the fact that you're like, I'm wearing a bright green suit. And that
Yeah,
was that was the standout point into like your creative zone. And for me, I am on a hike. I imagine these beautiful trees, and I'm getting to where I need to go with at least what I'm trying to pursue or the artwork that I'm trying to make. And I'm trying to find wonder in what I'm doing, and the trees that are above me, and the mountains that are that are behind me, the horizon that I'm approaching, or this wherever the sun is. I That's important to me. And whenever that I'm lost, or whenever I'm honestly like,
I can feel the wind in my hair already.
exactly, there you go. But even when I'm like walking back from work, I pop in my headphones and I think about that. I think about
Yeah,
where I'm headed, and I think about this so like quote unquote hike. By the way, I don't go on hikes like like because I feel like I get a lot of sensory from this creative journey that I'm on. And I always equate it. I always drive it back to the wilderness and this idea of exploration and the idea of what's out there. And that's where I find my creative space to be. But
that's awesome,
I
man.
asked a few other creatives this question. Back to Ryan Selvey, I asked him, and I was like, "Hey, so what does your creative space look like?" You had clocked out, by the way, Finn. This was like you went to sleep
Not
because you were up
sure.
so early that day. But I asked him, he was like, I don't think I have anything. Like he pretty much said the same thing you did, and I thought that was interesting. But we all take in the world and creativity and why we do this so differently, and I find a lot of wonder in that. I don't know why. I think it's cool to
Mm.
see how We all gravitate towards this one thing, but again, I mean, I'm sure you noticed, and we've talked about this quite often. I think when you're first approaching the creative industry, you think, hey, maybe I can follow XYZ's path. Maybe I can go to this school to get this job in order to, produce XYZ. But as I've learned, and I can't believe I didn't know this sooner, not to knock down anyone that is not in this mindset, but everybody is a trailblazer. Everybody does this differently because it's just such a unique thing, because everyone has such a unique skill set. And I had been so blinded about my job quest, about just even landing something,
Yeah.
that I had lost sight of that, that I can't just follow someone's path. I had to make my own. And
Right.
that's, again, when I picked up my own work, and started really designing for myself before getting noticed.
Yeah, man, that's pretty beautiful, and very true. Like, you have to get into this. You have to get into this all the way. It's easy to kind of like put your thumb in a couple pies while you're trying to do your design work, but you end up getting jam on the keyboard. So I think like ultimately, like put yourself in this world entirely if you can. Try to commit yourself to being a designer and make this your life. That's my
Yeah.
advice for people coming into and going out of school.
Yeah, and
Um,
let's self-actualize that right now, right here. What are your plans going forward in
Ooh.
even the rest of this year and the next year to stay involved with the community? How do you sustain
awesome.
that?
Yeah. So I have a bunch of different side projects going on in a couple of different communities, and it's looking like doing more work with Adobe, trying to keep that ball rolling. I love doing that work. I have one more year of school left until I graduate. Again, long story, but I'm trying to stay involved with like the comics community that I'm kind of building out here with my comic book club, and then me and my friends have a couple side projects we're working on in the comics world too. I have always like freelanced my entire design career. Ever since I started, I was doing things for people. So that will never stop. I don't want that to stop. I love doing that. And then, of course, finding inspiration in random things and then making a giant project out of it is one of my favorite things to do. So I have a bunch of things that I intend to build out on a notes on my phone.
Dude, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know if I
Let's
told
hear
you
it.
this. When I got on the plane from after Max, I actually me and Tyler, the Creative Pain,
Tyler Payne.
yeah, Tyler Payne, Tyler Pate, yeah. We were sitting at the airport just kind of talking about our experiences, and we weren't on the same flight this time, but on my flight back, I spent like 3 hours just typing on my
Wow.
phone, exactly like why I design, like what it like.
Yeah.
Maybe this is for lack of better terms, but like I hear this word tossed around all the time within designers. What is my design manifesto? I know that's like a very charged term, but what are my pillars and why am I doing this? What are my steps? How am I going to keep this going and as I kept writing, my creative space, this hike just kept coming back to me. So I kept making all these different analogies in mapping out what you want. You might not have a clear picture. The trees might be in a way,
Yo.
but think about the way you can illustrate around that mountain.
100%.
Picture that mountain without the trees and see what you can think about it, or
It is-
see
it is
where it'll take you.
So important to have goals or like mild objective bucket list, what have you, of any kind, as a creative, because it's easy to get sidetracked. Literally, like a lot of us probably have some kind of ADHD in the day-to-day life, but like long term too. So make sure you have like some kind of document or something where you
Yeah.
keep track of what you want to do, where you want to be going.
Yeah.
And to that point, you're capable of doing so much more than you realize. So dream twice as big. Make it almost impossible.
Dude,
Make it-
you're
push it
gonna
past that
get
point.
me. You're gonna get me on a whole thing because, after I'd given up on my dream job, maybe like a year and a half ago,
Which was what?
which was honestly the position that I'm in now. And I'll get to that in time.
Okay,
But no worries, no worries.
Yeah.
But when I given up on that dream, I was honest after that. I'd been the most depressed maybe that I'd ever been, because I'd lost this lightning rod that was my focus for so long. And then I was like, oh, I'm gonna be a UX designer. No, I'm gonna be a brand designer. No, I'm gonna be XYZ designer. Oh, I'm gonna make stuff for video games. And all this stuff I kept pulling just kept drawing blanks. And obviously, I'm going to keep being open to it, but it just wasn't fulfilling the way that I needed it to be fulfilling. And it was tough, so I relied on my personal work to really get me through those rough patches in order to feel a journey, because anytime you start a creative project, a long-term creative project, you feel your growth. I needed that again. And one thing led to another, and again, I mentioned it like a little bit earlier on in this podcast. I met the people I needed to meet, and sooner or later, because of that energy they provided to me, I started realizing that this goal that I had so lost was a lot closer than I had realized. But it was through the energy of these people that I could look at that dream again and say, hey, I want to do this again.
Right.
So taking that forward, with the confidence that they helped me grow, I got to where I needed to go. And every time I look back on that time in my life now, I regret how mean I was. My biggest regret was how mean I was to myself. And I wish I could just kind of go back, either a year and a half or maybe 4 years in the past, and say, hey man, like, you're gonna get to where you need to go. I just need you to enjoy this ride. Like, because ultimately, like, a lot of the times we don't have control over the luck we come into contact with. We don't have control over the job market even. Why would we?
Yeah, the technology that's
we don't have
evolving.
control over any of this.
Yeah.
And to some that's scary, but to me that's a little relieving that it is out of my control and I can't really do much about it. But what I can do is focus on myself and focus on my work and focus on why I'm going to be doing this for hopefully the foreseeable future.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. Always have goals in mind. That's the bottom line right there. Always have some goals in mind. And work hard. Work hard, have goals in mind. Don't be afraid of rejection too. Like you said, Universal shot you down, but that ended you up at like Disney. That's pretty amazing.
I will talk about that Universal interview because I actually did think that I was a good fit for that, because I care so much about story, and I thought I had gotten that across in the interview. Not to say that that was a bad interview. I had a great time with the people that I was interviewing, but I just wasn't right for the role. But that fueled me with those dreams of, wait a minute, this was so much closer than I had ever imagined. That was the only internship that I had applied to out of like 50 that had gotten it back to me. And I was like, wait a minute, this has to mean something. This means that I'm on the right path. And this is proof. And like literally one calendar year after that, I posted it on my LinkedIn like, hey, like, I got rejected by like a position that I really thought I'd get, but it stoked a fire in me again. And it made me want to pursue this dream again. And again, all these different things compounded within that year that elevated me to that status that I actually got to live out that dream. And now I'm living out that dream in an internship role. And all of our good friends at Adobe, at some point, it was their dream. So the fact that they got to lift me up in that way, and I get to they get to vicariously live that experience through me, is really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Wow. Living life big in LA.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Cool. Well, why don't we wrap this up by doing a little quick shooting round, and we can make like Gangstar and give our advice to you. So, listeners, here we go. Why don't we do this, Matt?
Don't do spoken word. I can't rhyme. Please don't do it. You can do it. I can't do it, man. Don't set the bar. If you're gonna do that, I'm gonna go first because you can't do it. Please don't.
It's okay. I won't bust out a freestyle on the podcast. You have to subscribe to my Instagram. No, I'm just kidding.
You should do that. I'm not gonna let that'd be pretty sick.
But why don't we go? Why don't we give through some quick pointers, some takeaways, recap kind of what we talked about, like 3 things from each of us. You want to go first?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all. Here,
No
please,
worries.
you go first.
I'll take it. So, three things that I think are super important, and I kind of have a little bit of a list here. They kind of go together. But first thing, we kind of talked about finding community, right? So finding people who can push you, who you can talk with, and talk design about. That's super important and pivotal. Like, make sure you have more than one, because like school will give you access to a lot of cool people and a lot of great things, but try to find some people outside of that. My second thing is make good habits, and this is two parted. So part number one, A, is to start doing incremental social things to kind of help you build up this kind of confidence that you can turn on and turn off when it comes to speaking to people. So say, hey, dude, nice shoes. Or like, what's up, man? How's it going? Um, doing that stuff in small ways, even like if somebody gets your order wrong in a restaurant, don't be afraid to kind of sit there and be in that uncomfortable conflict to figure it out. I think that ultimately adds up. And to that extent, put your phone down every now and again. And
Ah,
I'm such a wow boomer talking about this, but uh, put your phone out of the bathroom when you shower, and you'll be surprised at how many amazing things you think about. And when you walk home some days, don't put music on. Just listen to the world around you. You'd be surprised about how much you can learn, and how much your subconscious turns out good stuff. There'll be
I
probably
gotta
some
I
bad
gotta
stuff.
make it out over there. I gotta make it out over there to see the world
Yeah.
the way that you see it over there.
There's always some bad stuff when you listen to your thoughts, but it's just thoughts. You don't have to listen to them. And then the last thing that I would recommend is uh, to not focus on style, especially when it comes to drawing and especially when it comes to trends. Style is always in flux. Worry about your message, right? That is permanent. That's what's said and that's what's shouted. That's what people will remember.
Dude, you 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 really hit on that because actually I think I needed to hear that advice. Um, I I'm really trying to focus on finding my style, and actually like I was able to hone in on that. Sorry. I was able to hone in on the style so much more recently, and that's something that I've been really happy with. But to that point, let's see, my three takeaways from honestly our conversation. We did talk about a lot, so
Yeah.
let me just try to ruminate on that more. I think honestly, like dream big. Dream big is my number one, and
Hmm.
it sits there right now on kind of like my pedestal of what I believe design should be. Because I hated when I was at my lowest when I wasn't dreaming the biggest. Um, when I
Hmm.
have more wonder with the world, when I'm loving it, I'm going to dream high, to have not necessarily a high expectation of myself, but to know that I can get there as I put the work in, as I'm feeling out my growth within the personal project that I'm taking on. Be that going back to school, be that starting something on your own. Um, Feeling that growth is so important in determining your confidence. So like it's like feeling the sand beneath your feet when you're at the beach. That's what I equate it to. I speak in so many
I
metaphors.
love it, man. Yeah, I can
Um,
smell the salt water.
yeah, right. Yeah, and number two, don't stop creating. I think even as designers enter a lot of like corporate gigs or find like a full-time job, they stop designing for themselves outside of the work.
That's a big one. Yeah.
That is a big one, and something that me and a lot of my creative friends in the field, like discussing with one another, is keeping active. Because at the end of the day, like it's nice to own what you have, and it's nice to be able to go back and say, hey, like yes, I did this I did this thing, and it's really cool. But honestly, like I really like this. This is something I'm really proud about, and I was happy that I got to tell this story. Yeah, it doesn't have a didn't get a lot of likes, didn't get a lot of followers, but I can say I made this because I was passionate about it, and I was passionate about what it's going to bring to the world or what it might.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I think the last one is like we've been treading around it, but we haven't said it verbatim. Step out of your comfort zone.
Boom.
Try it just a little bit. Inch your way forward. Maybe it is talking to the barista at the coffee shop. Maybe it is a LinkedIn message to maybe someone in like
Who
a more
knows?
professional career. But
Yeah.
hey, you actually do miss all the shots you don't take. Who
Dude,
knew?
yes. Who knew?
Yeah.
Who knew?
And
Who knew?
my writer friend in the room next to me would differ because apparently that dialogue doesn't make any sense. But no, I'm gonna hold this against him.
No. Makes sense.
You really
your
miss
heart.
the shots you don't take. And someone reached out to me recently, and we had this amazing conversation about like life, design, and career, and that would have never happened if they never reached out. So I'm glad that they did, and by the end of our conversation, I was like, hey, like, thank you for reaching out. This was such a fantastic conversation, and I was so glad that I actually was able to meet you as opposed to just know your work online.
100%. And
Yeah.
speaking of reaching out, should anyone ever want to reach out to us, we are happy to critique, comment, address concerns, or share cat pictures. You can find us both on Instagram. My Instagram is at FinnCreate, FINNCREATE.
Yes, and I am at Matthew Tjokro, spelt MATTHEWTJOKRO, and my own personal project, Bearuji, spelled BEARUJI, on Instagram as well.
Yeah, baby. Baruji.
You guys have to keep up with what Finn's going to be putting out because he only puts out like 5% of the work he actually makes.
Yeah, I'm bad at Instagram.
I that's fine. Who needs it? We just really need Instagram to keep us connected, and I feel like that's the route that I'm going to take it with. But to that point, thank you guys so much for listening. This was such a blast, Nick. Thank you for like not forcing us, but saying, "Hey, at a table,
Yes.
you guys need to do this. I'm going to set this up.
We really
Please do
appreciate
this." Because this was an awesome experience, and me and Finn will just talk more about this later. But thank you,
Oh, yeah.
thank you so much for this, and guys, thank you all for listening.
Thank you all for listening. We got deep, we got graphic, we designed, and we sure did cast it off.
Yep. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.